came on Dr. Phil as Dr. Phil. He shaved his head. Listen, this is not a surprise.
If you think I exploit people, every time you bring a guest on this show, you exploit them and spread whatever the problems they have to the whole world. You think that's helping them?
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. You can go.
No. You know what? Who do you think you are, huh?
Why is Dr. Phil stupid?
First of all, he's not licensed to practice anymore, and his show is just solely advice. Two, he embarrasses his guests all the time. He's just embarrassing them on TV. And basically also he's finding these people just for entertainment purposes, but then when he tries to like help people, like help kids, he sends them to a ranch, and that ranch is part of the troubled teen industry, and the troubled teen industry is garbage.
I expected to be treated with understanding. Instead, I experienced retaliation from the ranch after I spoke up, in what appeared to me to be a punishment for reporting my abuse.
For decades, Dr. Phil McGraw was treated as something close to a real psychological authority. Millions of people handed him their most painful moments, and his show grew into one of the biggest daytime franchises in American TV history. Clips spread across YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook, racking up billions of views. He seemed completely untouchable. But here's what most people never knew. Dr. Phil is not a licensed psychologist. He held a license years ago, and it expired. He never renewed it, and he's never been authorized to practice psychology in California, where the show filmed. Every guest signs a waiver confirming they're receiving advice, not therapy.
Would anyone believe that Phil McGraw knows something special clinically?
Dr. Phil really isn't acting in the role of a psychologist at all.
He hasn't practiced since 1990. Now, he had his license until 2006, so even if he did know something, how is he going to apply it in that forum? Again, his show is not designed to deliver therapeutic services.
He's not putting the needs of his clients ahead of his own agenda.
So if Phil McGraw says it's not therapy, and he's not practicing in any way, what is it?
He's an entertainer who has studied psychology and who doesn't even have a license to practice anymore.
That legal loophole is the entire foundation of the show. And yet he diagnoses people in front of live studio audiences, pushes guests into confrontations they clearly don't want, all with zero clinical accountability. That alone should make you uncomfortable. Now it gets darker. Former reality star Todd Herzog appeared on the show in 2013 to discuss his alcoholism.
And I'm sober, I'm hurting a lot, and I'm shaking. My dad was there, and I went and talked to him in his dressing room, and I was completely sober. And then they pull me into my dressing room, and there was 2 liters of vodka and like some Red Bulls and orange juice and stuff like that. You know, being unsupervised by my parents, I drank the entire bottle. And then at some point, somebody gave me a Xanax. They said, this will calm your nerves. And so I had been drinking and took a Xanax, which I've never taken Xanax before in my life. And I know that can be a deadly combination, so why it was given to me.
Mixing alcohol and benzodiazepines isn't just reckless. It can be fatal.
Nice to meet you.
How you feeling, man? Can you walk?
Barely. I have to have help.
All right.
Sorry, I'm very...
That's all right. Brandon, why don't you get over there and take Debbie's spot?
Right. Yeah, I'll go.
And when Todd returned for a second appearance, the exact same setup was waiting. Same bottles, same environment. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern.
I'm sorry, I'm crying because I just can't believe this is happening. So,
turn around. Just come turn around.
1,
okay.
2, 3.
Here we go.
What do you guys have? 9-foot chair.
Then came the case that rewired internet culture entirely. In 2017, a 13-year-old named Danielle Bregoli appeared on the show after a series of violent confrontations with her mother. The episode didn't just go viral, it detonated. Catchphrases, memes, hundreds of millions of views, overnight fame.
Catch me outside, how about that? I'm in jail, jail ain't nothing. That's what I always do, and they never catch me. Ain't nobody gonna catch me.
Because you're too streetwise?
Yup. And all these hoes laughing like something funny.
She's talking about the audience, that they're laughing at her.
Did Did you say the hoes are laughing?
Yep.
So the audience are a bunch of hoes?
Yep. Catch me outside. How about that?
Huh?
Catch me outside. How about that?
Catch you outside? What does that mean?
What I just said.
But the second cameras stopped rolling, Danielle was shipped off to Turnabout Ranch, a so-called rehabilitation facility buried in rural Utah. Former residents described a place where teens were physically punished, psychologically abused, isolated, and neglected. Basic hygiene was restricted, singing and dancing were banned, kids were forced into stress positions, and the facility was so remote that leaving on your own was nearly impossible.
I went on the Dr. Phil show. So part of the whole Dr. Phil show is they send these kids to either Turnabout or these other programs that are also in Utah. Coming in the middle of the night, they don't tell them where they're going, they just take them, they handcuff them, they put them in the car. It's basically like kidnapping. That's the thing with these places is you have no evidence. You don't have a phone there, they don't have cameras there, like there's no evidence of none of this. And obviously all the staff is in on it, so they're not gonna snitch on each other. All you really have is the kids that are there. This place is all about taking away privileges. Like, okay, yeah, the phone is a privilege, TV, like all that, but they take away like necessity privileges, like sleeping on a bed, eating good food, not being cold.
Utah, it turns out, has some of the loosest regulations in the country for troubled teen facilities. Minimal inspections, barely any oversight.
Okay, so Turnabout is in the middle of Escalante, Utah. It's a very, 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 very small town. It's got one gas station, one grocery store. Everybody knows everybody there. You're in the middle of nowhere. You know there's nowhere to run. If you try to run out there, they're gonna find you, you're gonna get in more trouble, or if you do get away, you're gonna get eaten by a coyote.
And Dr. Phil's show didn't just send one kid there. It repeatedly promoted these places to desperate parents watching from their living rooms. Then came the death. A teenager with a documented history of suicidal ideation and substance withdrawal, the exact profile the ranch claimed it wouldn't take, was admitted anyway. The outcome was tragic. The remaining teens were reportedly told to stay silent about it, and the cameras kept rolling.
I tried to steal a car or something. Everyone was screaming on the walkies like it was really crazy, and he ended up killing one of the staff members. They made all the kids that were at Roundy come down, and then they told us not to tell us anything. A day later, they have us all, every kid that's at Turnabout, they have us all sit in a circle, and they're like, listen, there was an incident, I know some of y'all heard it over the walkies, Jimmy died. And so we're all freaking out, because Jimmy was, like I said, he was one of them that was there the first day I got there. He was really sweet. Not only did Jimmy die, but one of the other staff members that was there at the time, Alicia, who was the daughter of the nurse. Alicia, she was also injured, and 2 years later she died, and she was also left disabled after being attacked by Clay.
That's the moment this stops being a story about bad television and becomes something much darker. Parents had signed release forms giving the show direct access to these facilities. Allegations piled up, lawsuits followed, and still, kids kept getting sent.
I personally feel they swept this under the rug without even bothering to interview Hannah as a victim.
The suit is the latest accusation of abuse against youth behavioral treatment facilities in Utah. The lawsuit alleges Hannah was forced to perform hours of extra manual labor in extreme conditions while sleeping on a wooden plank.
There was already lawsuits before I went there. There's now many more after, but there was one as far back as 2012.
That's not an oversight. That's a decision. Was the goal ever actually to help anyone? Or was it to capture breakdowns, meltdowns, and tidy redemption arcs that looked great on camera? Because once you see the pattern, it's impossible to ignore.
Well, you know, she went to Turnabout 4 or 5 years ago, and if she had a bad experience, you know, obviously I would hate that. We'd be sorry about that, but we don't have anything to do with what happens with guests once they leave the stage. I mean, that's between the guardian and the parent and whatever facility they go to. So we're not involved in that. We don't have any feedback from them. So whatever happens once they're there, that's between them and the facility. I assume she had a problem.
Guests who clearly don't want to be there. Teens begging not to be filmed. Visibly unwell adults pushed straight into confrontation while a studio audience cheers. And Dr. Phil at the center of it all, calm and composed, while the chaos he built plays out around him. That chaos wasn't accidental, it was formatted. Once you understand what happened with those teens and those facilities, the adult cases start looking completely different. What once felt like tough love television starts to look a lot more like humiliation dressed up as help. The most disturbing example? Shelley Duvall. In 2016, the actress best known for The Shining appeared on Dr. Phil in an episode promoted weeks in advance. The promo alone was alarming. A 30-second out-of-context clip pushed everywhere, framing her as delusional and completely disconnected from reality. This wasn't educational. It wasn't subtle. It was bait. Shelley was clearly in crisis, dealing with mental illness and grief that had never been properly treated.
What Shelley experienced during The Shining pretty much affected her the rest of her life and even to today. And she kind of dropped off. Then in 2016, she made an appearance on Dr. Phil. This was her first appearance in 10 years.
I need help.
Well, that's why I'm here.
All new Dr. Phil.
I loved Robin Williams. I don't think he's dead.
Where do you think he is?
Shapeshift.
People who knew her personally went public immediately. Fellow artists, directors, and colleagues called for a boycott, accusing the show of exploiting a woman who couldn't meaningfully consent to being portrayed that way. And consent is exactly the right word. Signing a release form doesn't mean you understand how editing, promo cuts, and tabloid framing will reshape your story once it airs.
So let's talk about Dr. Phil's egregious exploitation of Shelley Duvall, probably one of the saddest examples of exploitation on his show ever, next to, the Britney Spears situation. Just a quick rundown. Shelley Duvall was once one of Hollywood's most promising young actresses, and she suffered a breakdown and went into seclusion. And the Dr. Phil show sought her out. Obviously for the express purpose to exploit her situation. And the result of that was a very bizarre interview that even had Hollywood heavyweights getting involved. Stanley Kubrick publicly denounced Dr. Phil's exploitation of her. Mia Farrow made her feelings known about that situation. A lot of people weighed in on that. And rightfully so, Dr. Phil suffered a lot of backlash for that. So much so that he actually stalked Shelley Duvall and her family afterwards to get her back on the show to try to salvage his reputation. And it's just a really sad example. It's probably one of the saddest examples of his exploitation of people.
Dr. Phil sent Shelley to a treatment facility thousands of miles from her home in Texas. Not somewhere familiar, not somewhere close. She left 3 days later and went straight back home. If the intention was genuinely to help her, why ship her that far away? Why package someone's most vulnerable moment as content? This wasn't a one-time slip. A teenage boy appeared on the show after his parents flagged concerns about gaming and violent behavior. He said repeatedly and on camera that he wasn't comfortable receiving psychological help in that setting. He looked distressed. At moments, his whole demeanor shifted in a way that felt oddly rehearsed, like someone had handed him a script before the cameras rolled. When guests resist the narrative, they don't get to keep it. Lawsuits followed. Former guests have sued Dr. Phil and CBS, alleging humiliation, misrepresentation, and emotional distress. One woman came on to discuss abuse she'd survived, only to have the conversation turned around on her, with the framing positioning her as unstable rather than as someone who needed support. That's not just a bad call. That changes how millions of people see her, and it doesn't go away. Watch the show closely, and a pattern becomes hard to miss. Dr. Phil doesn't sit with complexity or leave space for nuance. He asserts, interrupts, and steers. When a guest pushes back, the room turns. The crowd shifts. Suddenly, the guest is the problem. That's television psychology, not therapy. Former insiders have described a production culture where the real goal was never healing. It was drama, emotional spikes, and shareable moments that would circulate online long after the episode aired. When your subject matter is addiction, trauma, and mental illness, that kind of business model gets ethically dangerous fast. Here's the twist that reframes everything. Dr. Phil constantly positions himself as the authority in the room, leaning hard on his expertise. But he hasn't held an active license in years. He drops celebrity names like currency, appoints himself the moral compass of every conversation, and treats anyone who challenges him like they're simply too slow to keep up. His first wife reportedly described him as domineering and emotionally cold. She's no longer alive to elaborate, but what she left behind only deepens the portrait. A man wired for control, a platform built on confrontation, and an audience trained to judge. Then there are the facilities. Because even after lawsuits, even after deaths, even after repeated waves of abuse allegations, the show kept recommending places like Provo Canyon School. Former residents have publicly accused that facility of isolation, physical punishment, forced confinement, and deliberate humiliation. These weren't minor complaints. Kids described being strip-searched on arrival, forced to shower under supervision, locked in concrete rooms for days, denied basic bathroom access, and threatened into silence over something as small as a wrinkle in a bedsheet. So who opened the door to all of it? Dr. Phil. Parents watching from their living rooms genuinely believed that if he was endorsing something, it had to be okay. That level of trust is enormous. And when it's misplaced, the harm doesn't just fade. People carry it. Here's the uncomfortable core of this whole story. Dr. Phil didn't accidentally drift across ethical lines. He built a system where those lines were deliberately blurred. Legal waivers instead of licenses, advice dressed up as therapy, entertainment costumed as accountability. When criticism came, it got deflected. When scandals surfaced, they got minimized. When lawsuits landed, they got quietly settled or dismissed. The show ran for decades because it made money, not because it helped anyone. And here's the plot twist that rarely gets discussed. Brands built on contradiction eventually collapse under the weight of their own contradictions. The audience starts asking the questions the machine was never designed to answer, like why it's always the most vulnerable people paying the highest price. This isn't about cancel culture or one mishandled episode. It's about a long-running operation that turned genuine suffering into content and called it care. Once you see that clearly, you can't really unsee it. Real therapy is slow and unglamorous. It doesn't end with dramatic music and a standing ovation. It happens off-camera, with privacy, real boundaries, and actual accountability. Dr. Phil built the exact opposite of that, and millions of people trusted him anyway. His show gave audiences what they craved: instant clarity, instant villains, instant resolution. It felt satisfying to watch someone else's chaos get neatly sorted out on screen. But the show was never really about solutions. It was about controlling the narrative. He didn't guide conversations. He dominated them, using authority and moral certainty to compress complicated human struggles into digestible TV moments. And when guests didn't fit his framing, they were quietly positioned as difficult, dishonest, or beyond saving. There was no room for nuance in that structure, and absolutely no room for dignity. What's unsettling is how perfectly this mirrors the influencer era we're in right now. Dr. Phil didn't invent exploitation for engagement. He mastered it before YouTube even existed. He figured out early what modern creators now build entire careers on. People will watch anything if you tell them it's for their benefit. That's why his ratings stayed massive, even as public trust started slipping. The algorithm doesn't care about ethics, it cares about retention. And he owned retention by putting the most vulnerable people imaginable on full display, over and over, long after the consequences became impossible to ignore. After deaths, after lawsuits, after survivors described abuse and lifelong trauma in vivid detail. At some point, ignorance stops being a valid excuse. If you're recommending facilities accused of neglect and torture, you're responsible. If you're platforming suffering for profit, you're complicit. Good intentions don't cancel out that kind of damage. And yet he kept presenting himself as the calm, reasonable voice in the room, while everyone around him got framed as chaotic. He called criticism jealousy. He hid behind legal fine print. I'm not treating them, I'm advising them. They signed waivers. But here's what those technicalities completely miss. When you hold that level of power and trust, the legal line and the moral line are not the same thing. Parents trusted him, guests trusted him, millions of viewers trusted him. And when that trust was abused, the fallout didn't land on Dr. Phil. It landed on the people who were already struggling. He didn't need to exploit addicts or humiliate families to build a career. He chose to. And that choice kept getting made, again and again, long after he knew exactly what it cost the people sitting across from him. That's what so many former guests say when they look back. The moment cameras stopped rolling, the support vanished with them. No follow-up, no accountability, nothing. Just an aired episode and a world that had already moved on. And here's what makes that so hard to dismiss. This wasn't carelessness. It was consistency. He made the same choices repeatedly because they kept working. The audience rewarded them, the network profited, and the consequences stayed quiet until they didn't. Survivors started speaking up. Patterns became impossible to deny. The image cracked, not because anything changed behind the scenes, but because people finally stopped taking the performance at face value. So, does this shift how you see Dr. Phil and the kind of unchecked power TV personalities have always held? Or do you think the backlash has gone too far? Drop your take in the comments because I genuinely read every single one. If you want more deep dives into the stories that don't get told cleanly, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around. This story definitely isn't over. See you in the next one.